Welcome back to the SEO Weekly, where queries are weird, advice is controversial, and everything depends. My name is Garrett Sussman of the iPullrank agency. This week, we've got a little bit of a breakdown of the AI algorithms that make up Google search. We've got some great resources about SEO accessibility, and what do you do as a news publisher with all of those URLs? What are some of those best practices? Let's dive in. So this week, Pandu Nayak wrote all about how AI powers search. Did a bit of a walk down memory lane in terms of the various AI algorithms that Google's introduced over the years to improve search using a ton of context. So talked about rank brain and how we went from just identifying keywords and matching those to more concepts based on a variety of co-occurring words that happen on a document. Talked about neural matching, which was instituted in 2018, looking at an entire page or entire set of pages and then tying that to concepts. So it's, when you have an ambiguous search, you're more likely to get the right answer for what the searcher's looking for, tied to search intent. Then all the way to BERT, which adds a whole bunch of context. So when a single word might throw off a completely different meaning of the search, BERT has a much better understanding as to what is meant there, ties the context in there, and provides better results. All the way to MUM, which is the multi-unified model, which is still currently being rolled out. And not only is it 10 times more powerful than MUM, 100 times more powerful, it uses pictures and videos and all types of context. It's trained on 75 different languages to be able to say exactly what the search intent is. Well, not exactly, but it's trying its best, but understanding things a lot better, providing a lot more context, and also providing different types of search results to dive deeper into what the search intent is. Really interesting article, must read for anyone who works in SEO. It's not overly complicated, but it gives you a little bit of background there. So Google is testing buying guides in the SERPs. Barry Schwartz of Search Engine Roundtable picked up on Ben Frieselbaum's seen in the wild for baseball bats, these examples of like a deep buying guide where you're kind of identifying these attributes, almost like if it was an e-commerce shopping experience for, the baseball bat's brand and the color and the type and the prices. And Google showing this SERP mostly pulled from affiliate site examples to give a deeper dive right on the SERP for someone who's interested in e-commerce. It's an interesting play. It's another way that Google continues to try to improve the e-commerce search results and compete with Amazon. We'll see if that comes out. Barry couldn't replicate it at the time. Martin Splitt interviewed Monica Lent on his Devs and SEO video series. This one was all about why should developers learn SEO, and it was really cool because Monica explained how there are some of these parallel universes where when you're a developer learning, you rarely think about SEO, and that's something that can actually aid, especially when you have like product and marketing working together in the future. She also talked a little bit about how SEOs can help devs get excited about SEOs. Here's what she had to say about that.
Yeah.
And so there are aspects that really appeal to developers about SEO. The trouble is most of them don't realize that that's even out there. But at the same time, they can have a really big impact by fixing a lot of these problems that kind of tend to pile up over the years, especially when nobody's been paying attention to it. It's like the entropy of a website. Like if you don't look at it, it's like CSS. Like CSS will naturally decay. There is no that's my opinion.
It's true. It's true. Yeah.
So check out the rest of that video. This series is awesome. It's cool to hear Martin talk with all these tech SEOs, dev SEOs about their experiences, keeping it going. So love that video. Keep it up, Martin. So interestingly enough, on Reddit, John Mueller tagged into a question that someone was asking in the SEO subreddit all about whether or not CTAs above the fold were problematic for search. Now, this is a myth, I guess, that has been going around. Now, first off, John said that, they're not an issue. Google search doesn't say anything about CTA buttons. The issue that Barry Schwartz actually pointed out possibly comes from last September on an office hours where John was talking about Google identifying ads above the fold and how that's problematic. Now, if your CTA looks like a spammy, non-relevant ad that has nothing to do with the page, then John says that potentially could be an issue and impact your rankings, but there's no definitive if you have a CTA above the fold on a page that's going to hurt your rankings. And let's hear what John has to say specifically himself in that last September office hours.
What effect might come into play is our algorithms do look for things like ads above the fold that kind of push the main content down below the fold. And it's possible that we would think a lead gen form like that would be kind of like an ad. But I don't think it would always be the case.
So there you go. When it comes to CTAs above the fold, you don't want them to look like ads, look too spammy. However, it shouldn't be an issue for just a general CTA. So in the world of Twitter, Shelley Walsh did a nice little Twitter thread that summarized what she talked about with Hamani Kankaria and Aleda Solis on Aleda's Crawling Mondays YouTube series, all about content strategy. She talked about what content strategy is versus what it is not. She discussed tools that you should use for content strategy and how it all ties into SEO. I loved her deep dive. So in terms of what content strategy is, she says content strategy is connecting content production to a defined goal or outcome that your identified audience will respond to. It's mapping content to different stages of the customer journey buying funnel. It's using content for brand awareness and to gain visibility in SERPs, and it's considering the different channels for your audience so you can be where your audience is, YouTube, Instagram, etc. Content strategy is not a content calendar without any audience research, publishing X amount of blogs per week with no objective. So to her point, content strategy isn't just haphazard, throwing crap at the wall and hoping it sticks. It's specifically planning out how everything's tied together for what you want to be a topical authority on, and then producing that at an appropriate cadence, not letting the cadence drive the content. Check out the rest of that interview between those three ladies. It's really great. It's awesome to hear. Hamani had some great feedback and some insights as well. Mufaddal Sadriwala did his first Twitter thread. I love this dude. He participated in our Boring SEOs roundup of 2022 back in December, but he was talking all about Bing Webmaster tools, which are a great source of insights in terms of surfacing and analyzing your own search performance, or doing keyword research, or looking at your vitals when it comes to your own website. He identified 5 free tools that are available on Bing Webmaster Tools and how you can use them. They included Site Scan, SEO reports, backlinks comparison, keyword research, and Site Explorer. Great Twitter thread explaining how you can use all of those. Check that out. And he's a good follow. He's Muffy's keeping it real. Appreciate that. In the world of SEO accessibility, Christina LaVasseur put together a resource page all around how to make your site more accessible. Not only did she pull out some great newsletters and blog articles, but she also found some communities and tools and resources all around how you can ensure that your site is accessible. It's not just for SEOs, it's for developers as well, but it's something that she's passionate about, and I think that it's important to make the web as accessible as possible. So check out that page for a ton of great resources. Osman Hussein and Kane Jameson of Content Harmony put together a great article all around updating your content and refreshing it. If you have a ton of content that is suffering in the rankings or it's just old and outdated. They put together, a few different frameworks that you can use step by step on how to update it, especially with SEO in mind. So their recommendations were, for instance, you could go step 1, make sure the content still matches the search intent. So when you actually search on those queries, is the content that was ranking, is it still relevant to what you're currently seeing on the SERP? Step 2, cover the topic more comprehensively. So add more stuff, over time, there are more questions that people ask about a specific topic. Cover it when you're updating the content. Look for opportunities to make the content stand out. Step 4, update anything that is out of date. And step 5, publish and promote like new. When you put in a lot of time and effort to update a piece of content, start from scratch when it comes to promotion and distribution. Make sure that you're getting it out there all over again. It is new, and you're probably going to have slightly different audience than you originally had when you first publish it. So it's always good to promote that old content as new when you actually revamp it. Nick Swan of SEO Testing put together an epic 28 experiments, so like 20 ideas that you can test, ranges from beginner to advanced, but he has a lot of action items, like actual tactics of what you can test and see how it performs. So if you're at a loss for what to go through, start at the beginning and go all the way through it and test each one to improve your CRO and your SEO. Some of the ones that he had that I liked that stood out to me were, checking for search intent, testing that, table of contents, adding it or removing it. Probably adding it. If you don't have it, try adding it. I have never seen an example where a table of contents hurts your SEO rankings, but maybe it does. Expand the contents with FAQs, especially with those being a rich snippet that appears enhanced in the SERPs, and then run content through a grammar checker if you're having bad grammar on your content. And I'm an English major, I still need to remind myself the rules or use Grammarly, for instance, every now and again, and it helps. It'll help Google understand your content. Usually it'll result in better rankings, but tests. Those are great tests from Nick. Good job. Dr. Pete Myers of Moz did a test. He started to see, 7 stories, a 7-pack when it comes to top stories for news publications. He looked at 10,000 keywords from Mozcast and, found that 45% of those top stories only had 4 in there still, but ever since December, Google's been testing out adding more to the top stories. They've been kind of messing with news in general. He's seen that there have been 7, although it's rare, still less than 1%, but there's opportunity there, especially, we'll keep an eye on it to see if that number of news stories in the top stories increases. More competition. Google said that's their goal there by providing more top stories, is having more diverse sources for the news. Speaking of news, Barry Adams put together a really great everything that publishers need to know about URLs. He did a deep dive into, what is a URL, domains, different types of subfolders. It's a tricky thing, whether you should use emojis. It's a tricky thing whether or not that actually impacts your rankings. It's from his own personal experience and what he's seen, having worked with so many different publishers. So some of the questions that he answered were, should article URLs have a folder structure? He says it's optional, but it might actually help. Do article URLs need dates in them? A lot of news publications use dates in their URLs. He says no. He says, can the URL be different from the headline? He says yes. Can you use special characters in a URL? He says, yes, you can, but you shouldn't. So he goes into a bunch of other scenarios in that article. Super useful. Check it out. When it comes to SEO news, Barry Adams knows what he's talking about. There was a great interview by Erin Sparks on the Edge of the Web podcast. He interviewed Eli Schwartz all about his book, Product-Led SEO. One thing that I love when hearing from Eli is all about how he focuses on paying it forward. And he walks the walk. I frequently see Eli on LinkedIn asking if anyone's hiring for SEOs or if anyone's looking for a job, and then he'll connect people. It's a great thing because he's received a lot of help over his career and is always paying it forward. So whether it's product-led SEO or paying it forward, Eli Schwartz is always a great listen. So check out that interview with Erin. And Erin's a great interviewer. I love that podcast. Okay, so super technical, but Andy Volpini of Wordlift did this really great explanation of how he uses AI to look at e-commerce pages and create these subcategories, which can be really tricky with products and e-commerce because sometimes there's overlap between categories. So he actually created like an AI process for you to identify these topic clusters scientifically and identify what those subcategories should be. So he broke it down by, first you analyze the search demand, then you cluster the queries using topic modeling, which, is optional. So like TF-IDF using co-occurring keywords and saying, okay, well, these belong in this topic and this belongs in this topic. So doing that with your content and then extracting the keywords that should be used for these subcategories and then ultimately analyzing the list of products and making sure that you get it right. It's a very awesome step-by-step way that you can use AI to scientifically cluster and create those subcategories if you're working in e-commerce. Blue Array, the agency in the UK, put together a cool tech SEO course. It's for free. You can learn all about it. There are 14 different modules, 70 different videos. Team did a great job there. That's available and you get a certification at the end of it. So check out that course if you're interested in learning tech SEO. Also, SEMrush is doing an educational program where they're providing 3 months of SEMrush, their pro level, for free to colleges and students all across the nation. I actually did a lecture for the College of Charleston the other day and had a great experience. It was really cool to be able to share with these students who are looking to get into digital marketing why SEO is awesome. And I'm pretty sure they were into it. So that was a cool experience. I love the initiative by SEMrush. You can check that out in the description. So last week we talked all about the Google Search Console URL inspection API being released for free. Screaming Frog's already on it. Sitebulb is already on it. Well, Lazarina Stoy put together like this awesome, badass Google Data Studio report template that you can use tied to your Google Search Console. It goes into, all the details, whether it's canonicals or indexing or rich snippet validation. It's very beautifully designed. It's accessible and available. Check that out. Lazarina is awesome when it comes to tech SEO. Follow her on Twitter if you don't already. She knows her stuff in the world of tech. So awesome work on that, Lazarina. And then our own John Murch put together so if you use Slack and if you are talking SEO and keyword research with some colleagues, wouldn't it be cool if you could just do a / command for a keyword and then get the search volume data of that and maybe even some CPC data? Well, John put together like a step-by-step tutorial on how you can build that Slack app and create those / commands using GrepWord's keyword database and do that all within Slack. Really cool, really easy to use, so you can check out that article. And then finally, speaking of John Murch, next week on Thursday, I am having him on Rankable. Him and I are going to talk all about advanced SERPs, so like under the hood of the SERPs, a little bit about web scraping, a little bit about, using like pixels and pixel height to determine the value of where your rankings are based on SERPs. That's going to be a great Rankable podcast. And also on the 24th, speaking of that, both John and Mike King of iPullrank are doing a free webinar going deep into why your rank tracking is not good enough. So it's going to expand kind of on that interview that John and I are doing and go into the history of rank tracking, why the 10 blue links model is completely anachronistic, it's out of date, and why you have to take into consideration ads and various rich snippets and how to do that kind of at scale, which is really tricky right now. Not a lot of rank tracking tools get that right. So Mike and John are going to give a full presentation on where it's been, where it's going, what they predict, and some things that you should keep an eye on that's really going to help you do modern rank tracking. So you can register for that free webinar. That's going to be on the 24th of February. Looking forward to that at 1 p.m. That's it. Thank you for watching another episode of the SEO Weekly. My name is Garrett Sussman. I hope you've enjoyed it. Please Subscribe, like if you enjoyed it, share it out to the world. Otherwise, I hope you have a great weekend, and I will catch you later.